Good evening, everybody. Hopefully everything's working now. Everything was slow, then I had to reboot my computer, then my microphone wouldn't work. Oh, it's all been a bit weird. But I think we're all up together and everything seems to be working now. The volume's okay. It's true, I do hate the heat. I'm very much a cold weather person. It's probably because of all the extra blubber I carry around with me. I'd love to go to Norway, actually. I started learning Norwegian as a hobby. Oh, can I still remember 1 to 10? Can I? Is it like N, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Is that it? Anyone who's Norwegian is probably cringing at that, but that's about all I can remember. The only other Norwegian I can remember is Jeg snakker bare litt norsk, which is I don't speak Norwegian. Stairs, yes, thank you. I've been refining and polishing just the general stairs geometry, so you can see all this is all nice and curvy and smooth now, and also the connecting points here. I've smoothed all of this off, rounded off all the edges. Still need to drill through some bolt holes to actually connect it to the framework, but yeah. Getting there. I thought I'd save the second handrail for the stream, because on the last stream I was struggling to do the handrail because for some reason the extruding tool was messing up. I won't be focusing on the stairs for this stream. I'm going to go through the roadmap a little bit, but for the benefit of people that were on the last stream, here is how I fixed my problem. So if we just draw myself a profile for the handrail. Get this in the exact middle. Come on, click into place. Yeah, so ultimately, the issue I was having last time is the plugin wasn't working. I've got like a power bar thing with lots of different plugins built in, but the standalone version of the plugin does work. So you can just draw a path, take your face, and it will extrude along that path. So just to remind everyone how it horribly went wrong last time, if you just use the follow me tool in SketchUp, what it does is it actually twists along the path, so you get a handrail that looks like this, which obviously is no good. We don't want that. However, if you use an upright extruder instead, like so, then what it does is it constrains the face to an upright position. So, oh, come on SketchUp, stop doing that. So it remains upright all the way down, which at face value looks good, but you'll notice here that because it's maintaining the vertical orientation, when you start getting into the curve, it starts getting thinner. So you've got the fat bit here, and it gets thinner and thinner and thinner as it goes around. So while we've got the curve we wanted, we don't have the profile thickness that we wanted. So the easy solution to that is we just take the lower face, delete the rest of it, paste that one back in, and then simply extrude this by average direction for 4 centimeters. And now we've got consistent depth of the handrail all the way through, and a consistent upright curve as well, which is exactly what I was after last time. And it was actually that simple. So there we go. That's exactly the handrail shaping did. And yeah, having the plugin not actually be broken was quite useful in the end. So then I just need to round off the end. What more faces than that actually? Let's make it 6-sided. So that's one side. Other side. All the bits we don't want, soften it up, and then we also want to just curve the top a little bit, make it nice and smooth. There we go. There is our second handrail. SketchUp really doesn't like zooming the camera if there's nothing behind it. It completely loses the geometry. Well, that's no good, is it? We don't want that. No overlapping vertices. Bottom bit's going to require some fixing. Right, where is it messing up? That's interesting. Doing the top face has actually fixed the bottom face. If it works. Yeah, that looks clean enough. I'll take it. Going on there. almost called that. Yeah, it's I think it's just main stairwell. But as you can see, anyway, we get our nice flowing curve on the handrail with everything all pointing in the right direction. So I just need to take all of that geometry and make that a group. And we stick that in the same group as the rest of it. Although I don't imagine it's the same height as the other one. It does have like water slide, like air to it, doesn't it? That would be quite a gnarly thing to go down, I would have thought. There we go. And just one last thing to do with that, which is to go through here and sort out the normals so they're all facing the right direction. And there we go. So I think that's about as smooth as we're going to get. I could probably smooth it off even more if we used subdivision on the mesh, but I don't think that's needed. I think that will do. So the only thing I need to do here now is obviously put the glass back in. But I can't quite decide whether or not to go with the same balustrades that we have on in the lounge, i.e. these ones. So do I go with these ones and have the glass mounted like this? Or do I just have the glass mounted into the plastic? There are kind of pros and cons for both. I think ideally I'd like to use the same balustrades we have up here and sort of keep it consistent throughout these areas of the ship. The issue with that, of course, is that we're going to be on a slope, and that's also why I haven't done them here on this slope, because you have to get the glass to angle into this somehow, which means you're going to need custom versions of this to mount the glass at an angle, and kind of custom angled feet as well. I think overall that would be more consistent, with the design of the ship, and especially if we take this and put it here as well. So this bit here is also consistent with the rest of it. That's something I can riff on and find something that looks good. Ooh, and I just forgot. It always removes the collisions, so I need to put them back on. Someone mentions that the NPCs can't path up the stairs. And yes, that is indeed an issue because of these curved edges. The pathing code really hates these little beveled edges. It treats it like a slope that it can't walk up, because rather than seeing this as a step because of the collision mesh kind of conforming to this, it sees it as a slope that it can't walk up. I think you can actually override. So if we set that to 90, that should fix that problem. But I do also need to create a custom collision mesh for this anyway. We don't want the collision mesh to be this detailed, we just want square edges. I'll add that to my ever increasingly long to-do list. Yeah, I was tempted to add ramps, because ramps give you a much smoother experience going up and down the stairs. The issue with that is the foot locking for the foot IK, because you end up with the foot locking in midair on the slope. So if we can get the foot locking to lock to the step and the player capsule to actually glide down the slope, that would be a much nicer experience, because then the camera stays nice and smooth, but you still get foot IK properly stepping on the steps. Yeah, it's definitely possible. You just need to separate the collision groups. So if we can have the slope set to collide with the capsule, but not the foot locking detection, then that would work. But that's something I would have to research and look into. I'm sure it's possible. Right, okay, so with that done, what I was going to do so on the roadmap, there's a few bits and pieces that we need to get done before this patch can go live to the public. That's not the right one. Where are we? This one. So there are a few things on here that I have practically done. Some of them do need a little bit more polish, but most of them are on their way to being complete. So I thought what I might do for this stream is maybe just cherry pick some of the quicker, easier things, just so we can tick off some more things on the roadmap. Because we want to get this patch done and dusted so we can move on. So again, as of the past couple of streams, we've decided to push the sublight engines back a patch and focus on the bridge NPCs for the next update, because it's kind of more pressing that we actually have some NPCs on the bridge that we can order around. And whilst we're working on this, I'll also build the custom star system tool for backers. We won't have the website side of it done yet, but at least we can build the in-game tool, so you can start building and designing star systems and at least save them locally so they can be in your local games. It's kind of the step one ahead of having them distributed, globally for all players. But it would be nice to get that done in the next patch, along with things like patches, like backer uniform patches, things like that. So it'd be nice to start implementing some of those things. And we've spent far too long working on this update, so it's time to get rid and get it finished. Yeah, the custom override codes. Did Claire add it to this? Hang on. She was updating the roadmap the other day. She put it on this one. It's on there somewhere. But yes, so making the door code part of the ship customization for now, That's not its permanent home, but it's a good a place as any. Or rather, not the ship customization, but the host controls for multiplayer games. So hosts can set the default door code and then lock doors, and then no players can enter those rooms, just to add a layer of protection against people messing up multiplayer games. Ultimately, we want that override code to also be used for critical ship functions, so you can't turn the reactor off without entering the code, that sort of thing. I'll see how long that takes to do, because I might be able to squeeze it on in this patch. But let's get the other stuff done first. I would say if I can't find the time on this patch for it, then definitely in the next one. Yeah, so exporting the data is not the difficult part. It's hosting it and distributing it that's the awkward part. We really need that moderation queue on our website so that we can go through all the submitted planets, make sure that they have good data, there's no errors in the data, and also make sure that things like the names are not, let's just say, immersion breaking. Yeah, I'm still tempted to save this by way of using a SQLite database. It works so well for the real world star data. It's so fast. It would be good to use it for custom systems as well. I mean, to put it into perspective, we can pull stellar data out of a database with over 18 million rows in something like 15 milliseconds. It's really, really, really quick. Obviously, we're not going to have 18 million backer systems, so reading from an SQLite database should be really, really quick. Right, so where were we with this? So atmospheric chemicals, done for gas giants, still needs doing for terrestrial worlds. Atmospheric pressure hasn't been started yet. Ocean chemicals is kind of half done. Greenhouse effect hasn't really been started yet. It's kind of half done, but needs to be changed. Planetary scanning output to the holo display. We have planets, we just need a bit more data. I'm going to cut this from this patch. So what I was going to do is calculate the apparent magnitude of stars and adjust their brightness based on that apparent magnitude, so we would have proper constellations that we can recognize. But there's an important prerequisite to that, and that is to be able to render really, really distant stars, like Betelgeuse, for example, for Orion's Belt, for Orion, in such a way that it's far enough away that its apparent magnitude is still visible. That makes sense. But we can't render anything beyond 150 light years right now, which means that known constellations are too far away, that the stars that make up those constellations are well beyond that range. So this particular action point is irrelevant for this patch because we don't have the thing that it needs. So I won't bother with this for this update. In fact, I'll edit that out now. So we'll bump that until we do a bit of a refactor on how the sectors are generated. Yeah, the sensors overhaul, it's almost finished. It's all the little sort of nitty bitty bits now at the end of the process. mostly UI work. And as I have stated many times, I hate UI work. So when I say next patch, I mean next public patch. So over the past couple of years, we've tried various different approaches to how we build patches for the game, or rather how we manage the patch cycles. The last patch cycle was really overly granular and was difficult to work with. So we're focusing more now on a high-level overview of the main thrust of the patch. So like patch 225 is all about alien life in the galaxy, thus we're calling it the Drake equation. And everything in that patch kind of supports that goal. So the next patch cycle, so when this is done, when all of these action points are complete and polished, this goes out to the public on the live public demo. We then start working on patch cycle 227, which should be 226. That's a Claire typo. Fix that. Yeah, so patch cycle 226 is essentially another public patch. It'll have all of its own action points and things that we want to complete in support of that patch. So it's going to be NPCs on the bridge and the custom star system tool. Those are, I would say, the two main things in that patch. I'll probably also add keybinds and controller support for that as well. We were going to do that as part of the sublight engines because it made sense to have controller support at that point, but it's something that's really lacking, so I think it's worth squeezing it in there. But we'll write the to-do list for this, once we're further towards completion on these. Yeah, Aaron, the holo display should stay off. If you're referring to the dev build, because what happens at the moment is, so you've got the ability on here to turn it off. So you can turn it off with this button, but the problem is when you change the sensor mode over here, it overrides what's on this display here, and that's just a logic error. So I just need to go through and make sure that this console doesn't override this console. Yeah, and you're right actually. So if you're on the long range sensors and you travel 1 light year, it refreshes the list of targets, and of course the act of refreshing the list also tells the holo display to refresh its display, and it's not checking to see whether or not it's been turned off. That's actually quite a simple fix. I just need to put a check on there to, like, if off, don't update. Should be fairly straightforward. An ETA on the public patch. It's really difficult to put timescales on some of these things, especially with the galaxy stuff and building all the life data that we've been doing, because it's one of those rabbit holes that just keeps getting deeper, and at some point we need to find the cutoff for that. So it's hard to say how long this is going to take. So all we can really do is just work through these action points and tick them off as we go. I think as soon as possible is the best timescale I can put on it. Yeah, exactly, Dave. We don't want to rush it for the sake of just getting it out the door. I would definitely say that this patch has taken way longer than I wanted it to, because of the aforementioned rabbit hole that we've gone down. And hopefully future updates won't take as long, because we won't be going down such long and winding rabbit holes with Galaxy data. Yeah, how much power does the holo display consume? I think it's a couple of kilowatts at the moment. Ideally, it should be more. We wanted to make it so that at least at this point in the game's timeline, holo displays are still kind of new technology. They're very power hungry. They're very basic, which gives us the freedom to make them improved in the future, so we can have that clear path of improvement from the basic holo displays we have now to maybe something more like a holodeck, further in the future when the technology matures. Okay, why don't we? Because head bob is always a contentious thing. Let's sort out these accessibility things. Hopefully, we can get all 3 of those done and dusted on this stream, which would make Claire happy because she gets to tick things off. It doesn't make me happy because I have to work on UIs, but what the hey? Does, however, mean I have to remember where these things are, because it's been quite a few months before I last touched them. Right, so we want settings menu. Yeah, multi-star systems. So the first multi-star systems we're going to implement are going to be multiple stars around a common berry center, and then just planets orbiting that group of stars. It's the simplest form of multi-star system that there is. Maybe just a binary orbiting one another. That should be relatively straightforward and easy to implement. And moons, while we're at it. Where it gets complicated is where you have multiple stars and multiple berry centers, and then multiple groups of planets orbiting multiple stars that are all orbiting one another. That's where it's going to get absolutely mental. So that's going to be time consuming, I'm sure, but we won't be approaching that quite yet. God, this UI's outdated now as well. I immediately want to just tear this apart and redo it nicely, but I have to resist the urge, lest I get a slap from Claire. So I was going to put head bobbing under accessibility, but if it's off by default, then kind of no longer relevant here. So I might just stick it on preferences instead. Thanks, Brachiotuthis. I hope I pronounced that properly. Glad to have you on the stream. How is the rest of the team doing? We still got the 2 concept artists that are almost done, to be honest. They've put together some nice designs. And we're now looking at hitting Unreal Slackers for a couple of Unreal Generalists. We do have one Unreal Generalist who's also a pretty decent 3D modeler waiting in the wings. And we're just kind of working out how to handle that because they're in Canada. So being outside of the UK, we've got some sort of international employment laws to work our way around. But once we've sorted those out, we'll be bringing them on board as soon as possible, hopefully. In terms of what I want people to be doing, I think planetary landings are something I'm going to try and get into the game reasonably soon. I think that's probably the biggest ticket item that people want to see. So I need people that can make that happen. So I definitely want a shader artist who's got a lot of experience working with volumetrics, because again, one of the big features in the game is going to be refueling from gas giants, and we want that to be absolutely epic every time. So we need some really, really nice volumetric gas giant cloud layers to be flying through. So I need someone to do that. You've obviously got the web developer side of things. That's kind of outside of the game, but kind of game adjacent. So we need someone for that. We've had some nibbles to our recruitments on that, but no kind of firm hires yet. Yeah, the Unreal Generalist we're already talking to, and perhaps an additional one as well. Yeah, I think on the whole, that should get us a decent way forward with where we need to be. Yeah, the original plan, Anasi, with the space stations, because there was quite a logical path, which was to get shuttles done and space stations done, because that gives us the ability to transition from the ship to a space station, which is an external environment, which means that we're getting the shuttle flight done, we're getting the ability to transition to external environments done, and it's kind of sorting out some of those core systems that need to be polished to make our way to the full planetary landing experience. But I think what we'll do is we'll go around about slightly, where we'll do the planetary surfaces, which, if we're literally just making surface environments, that's a nothing burger. I mean, Unreal does that out of the box. It's barely any development needed for that. And then what we'll do is we'll have it so that we'll have a shuttle parked in the shuttle bay, and you just go and click on it and it will teleport you to the surface. Obviously that's not the final implementation, but it at least gets surfaces in the game and tested without having to do a lot of the development work around actually making the shuttles flyable properly now, at this point in time. We can get some of the more fun stuff in the game sooner if we do it in a slightly different order, if that makes sense. Obviously. yeah, Dave. Definitely. Probably a cube, but yes. Procedural space stations, full shuttle flights, and other environments. It's all coming. It's just the whole question of what order do you do it in, and people are kind of chomping at the bit for more fun things to do. So at least putting the planetary surfaces in the game and just teleporting down to them is is better than not having them at all, if that makes sense. And it means that we can test out that tech and give you something to do when you get to a planet. So rather than just looking at it out the window, you can at least teleport to the surface and wander around and take a look. It's yeah, just something a little extra that's a reasonably quick win. Because like I said, surface environments is what it's Unreal Engine bread and butter. Yes, Paul, exactly that. So in the finished version of the game, you will have to physically fly the shuttle down to a certain altitude above the planet where it will handle the surface transition. Either it'll be a small cutscene or like a masked loading sequence where the planetary surface is generated, and then you'll be back in control of the shuttle above the surface and you can fly around and look for somewhere to land. It's the cleanest way that we can do it whilst requiring a loading screen, which is necessary for this. But yeah, before we have shuttles implemented, just teleporting down will do. Yeah, probes is something that we can probably do at the same time. It's while we've got the Unreal Generalist on board, we can perhaps get them focusing on a procedural asset creation, because we need to get the core system for procedural assets underway, where we take a few base meshes for, say, a plant, and then build the system for generating a near infinite number of variations on that plant, with color, stretching and scaling meshes, and maybe having some morph targets and that sort of thing, so that we can do a lot of visual variation from a small number of base meshes, and we need to build the tools and systems around that. So that could very much be the very first job we give an Unreal Generalist. Yes, Firstus, the shuttles are going to be no different than the main ship, other than the fact they lack an FTL drive. So you will be able to fly them around exactly the same as you can fly the main ship around. You just can't go to FTL and go anywhere far away with them. Don, yes, the home key, that's a good idea. To be honest, I may as well do that right now, because that's an easy one. Question is, where is it? Is it that one? Yeah. The file structure is definitely begging for a bit of a tidy up at some point. There we go. Yes, Anasi, the helm requires a lot of stuff yet. Things like all your general orbit orientations, like retrograde, prograde, orbit normal, like Sadir and Zenith. Those, I can't remember what they are now. Those things, like up, down, relevant to the planet. Nadir. It's been a while since I looked at them. And yes, there will be a flight computer where you can save essentially an infinite number of saved locations, and then scroll through those. So if you find a particularly cool thing, you can save that location, give it a name and a description, and then go back there at any point. Yeah, we need Orbit Crazy as an Easter egg. Aaron, yeah, what you mentioned there about the home key having to track where Earth is, that is one of the issues we're going to have with having star systems move. So once they start ticking like a clock and all the planets start moving around, obviously the location of that planet is going to be moving at a couple of thousand kilometers an hour. So we need to be able to constantly track where those planets are. I imagine the way we'll handle this is when you're in the system, it will be moving and the sensors will just know where those things are because it will constantly be updating in the background. If you fly away from that system, when you're not in it, obviously it's not precessing or processing. Is it precessing? Is that what it's called when planets move? So we have to count how long it's been since you were last there, and then when you come back to that, say a month later, we need to update where everything is based on how long you've been away. There are ways and means around it, but the the more complicated part of that is that if the planet's moving and the thing maybe orbiting it, like a space station, is moving, then the ship has to be dragged along with it. So if you exit FTL next to a station, next to a planet, and those things are moving around the central star, then we need to update the physics state for the ship so that the ship's physics is being dragged with the planet. It's one of those very, very deep rabbit holes that has a lot of prerequisites required around it. So that's not a small thing to add. Yeah, the tablet, the tripping up tablet is still there. Right, so I'm going to take away head bobbing from the accessibility tab and stick it on preferences, which means I also need to remove it from the camera cycle. Yeah, we really do. Fortunately, we've got quite a few backers who are experienced in these things. We've got quite a few people with PhDs in various subjects who are advising in the background. And that's amazing. It's amazing to have that help. So I'm going to change this to camera zoom amount. I guess amount will do. So the idea of this is that you'll be able to change just how much the camera zooms when you hold the right mouse button down. To come up with a decent range there. I guess 100% would be double, but it works on the FOV, so I need to maybe use the FOV value in there. So when you press these buttons, perhaps not those ones. There's a lot of hoops that it jumps through to do the save, the settings and the saving of the settings. I created a macro for all of the actions that it performs, which, to be honest, wasn't necessary. That's a bit of an over-engineered solution, because I just could have done a collapsed node graph instead. I wasn't really using collapsed nodes back then when I made this. So at some point I'll convert these to collapsed nodes rather than macros, because we don't need this massive list of macros here. We do need is camera zoom. So you want that one and that one. What we'll do is I'll take one that has a range on it. This one, I suppose. And if we expand that and then collapse that. Thank you, Delta. I shall make every effort to include a working bed as soon as possible. Everyone deserves a nap every now and then. So why do I have 2 inputs and only 1 node? Oh, that would be better as a slider, actually. Yeah, why not? Why not make it a slider? Although, that said, no, I won't for now. I want to change how this works. I'm going to keep it as buttons for now. Let's not overcomplicate it. Right, so that's going to need a variable, which means we need... I guess we'll keep it as an integer. We don't want that. What we want is you. And that needs to be, oh, I can't type today. Set text. Actually, that needs to be a percentage, so let's do this. No, actually, I will format it first because I don't want it to put commas on things. So right, okay, so that's the loaded value. So if we press plus, we need to increment that. We want to add a certain amount to that. There will be a weapons locker on the bridge, so as you come in the doors on the left hand side, in that alcove, that's where the internal security guy will be sitting, and he will have a weapons locker on the wall. There'll be plenty of ordnance in there for the bridge crew if needed. Firstus, yes, thank you, and a window to look out as well. Yeah, I need to re-export the windows as a separate object, and then we can have windows back in the staterooms. God of Bears, we are currently working through some of the to-do list items on the roadmap for the current patch. We're cherry picking a few of the easier things just to get them ticked off on the list, just to bring us one step closer to getting that patch out the door. Right, so if we go up in 10% increments, yeah, I would say a collection of pistols and a couple of rifles. There's, generally speaking, there's 11 bridge crew, so it's going to be a minimum of 11 weapons plus some extras. Okay, so what we're doing with the mouse sensitivity is we're sending out a global event. So I'll need to set up one of these for the camera zoom as well. Yeah, an inventory is definitely something that's needed. I want to try and keep it as realistic as possible. So obviously people have pockets, people have belts that things can be put on. How we manage inventory is something we're going to have a think about. Everything in the game is in the game. So we don't have menus that pop up for anything in the game. Every action on the ship takes place within the world, so we don't want to do anything that brings up a menu. So an inventory system has to be handled in the same way. Now, it's okay if it's on the HUD, so maybe like a 1 to 0 inventory slot, where you can just use the number keys to select the item from the inventory, like how Minecraft does it, for example. And then have those items kind of secreted on your person somewhere. But yeah, we'll have to think about that. But we definitely want the ability to pick things up and carry them around. But the problem, of course, is we don't want things held in your hands the whole time, because that means your hands are not usable because you're carrying stuff. But then there's an argument to be made about that being realistic. If your hands are full, you can't press buttons. But that's where the balance has to come into it. Practicalities of gameplay versus realism, and how far in either direction does that needle go. But yeah, we'll chew on that further down the road, I think, once we have a need for an inventory. There will be some form of inventory system. It's just unclear as to exactly what that will look like yet. Yeah, VR is a relatively simple one, because you can just have connection points around the body, like a weapon that goes into a holster. That's simple. You just holster the weapon, or something that you sling onto your back. But it's like if you have a plant or a rock, where do you keep a plant or a rock upon your personage? You can't just put a plant in your pocket. Yeah, face mash the control panels, that works. That's why we have noses. Yeah, things like tools and equipment, they're relatively easy to make provision for. It's more the everything else. Like a cat. Like if you pick up a cat, you can't just put it in your pocket. You need to hold it. I think that's probably, to be honest, how we'll do it. So for things like tools and weapons, you can holster them, and there will be action slots where you can draw those things out to use them. I think for everything else, you're literally just going to have to carry it around. So you can't fill your pockets with plants. Yeah, that's a good point. We do have 2 hands. Right, so what am I doing here? So if we're loading our value, we just update the UI. We need to make provision for the buttons being disabled. I think we will just steal the code on this one for that. I reckon. So if it's so if it's lower than 0, disable the minus button, and if it's over 100, then we will disable the plus button. And we're going to have to map this range to an FOV in order for that to work. So we need, in that case, a global event. So that is event camera zoom. I really should have the word settings in these events, just going to get confusing in the long run. Default that to 50%. Event camera zoom. But we also need to set that up by constructing it. Where's the event graph gone? There it is. Blah 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 blah. So we need to construct camera zoom. And then promote that to a variable. zoom amount, which would be this. No. Oh, yeah. Don't want them there, do we? We want this one. And the payload will be that. Right, so that should be everything that's needed there. It is very messy, and that's not something I generally enjoy, so let's sort that out a little bit. Right, so what are we doing here? We are loading our default value, updating the UI, and then going blah blah blah. Surely these guys ought to be over here, because yeah, so we want to update the UI with that changed value. So either that value is coming from the default, or that value is coming from our updated value, because we've just pressed a button. Should do the trick, I think. So it's not going to do anything yet, but we should be able to at least make sure that the UI constraints work and it applies the right values. Why is it not there? Did I hide it? Why would I have done that? Right, so the text, we don't want to be hit testable, but the button we do. Right, we need to set this actually to 50%. Right, that should at least make it visible. And I think rather than loading the full map every time, because that takes time, why don't we go and load one of our test levels? Which one have I used recently? waiting around for it. Right. Stops at 0. Stops at 100. So it started at 50. So that's all good. Of course, what it won't do is save. Yeah, so if I set that to 0, exit, start the game again, go back into settings, it's back to 50, yeah, so it's not saving. Okay, easily fixed. Keeping the ship static is a necessity for what it is we want to do with the game. So our kind of the main point of the game really is living and working aboard a big, large vessel in space. And in order to have a big vessel with expansive ship interiors, you need really good physics. Like good English would help if I could speak properly. You need everything in that environment to be physics aware, and you can't have massive physics enabled environments moving, at least not within Unreal Engine. Star Citizen gets around it using clever tech. We don't have that clever tech, so we have to have static ship interiors and move space around the ship, or at least move the visual representation of space around the ship. Which means then, by doing it that way, our ship interiors are virtually limitless in how big they could be. I mean, we could have like a 6-mile long vessel and not have to worry about having to move any of that or calculate physics for any of that, because it's completely static in the world. The disadvantages of doing it that way is you can't really have things like real-time planetary landings, because you're then having to move the planet rather than moving the ship. So, whichever way round you do it, something's got to move. Games like Elite and No Man's Sky, they can have real-time planetary landings because they don't have ship interiors. So they don't have that physics environment that you're walking around. So they don't need to move space, they can just move the ship because you're locked in place. Which is also why, incidentally, you are forced to sit when fleet carriers perform their jump. It's all the smoke and mirrors of game dev. Okay, so now that we've added the buttons for this, we need to handle the loading and the saving. So we got the load settings there. So the struct is going to need updating with a new value. That always makes me cringe because I hate updating structs once they've been established. This is going to require a restart of the engine. why it's being referenced by the player controller. I'll have to look into that before we put the patch out. Top tip for anyone developing with Unreal is always keep an eye on your reference chains, because you can dig yourself into some really horrible holes with circular references and massive reference chains where something like player controller practically loads the entire game because of the so many reference chains where things are connecting to each other for casting and the like. Casting is the devil. Right, so I'm going to have to save everything, add what I need to add, and then restart the engine because of a bug. If I don't do that, and then I save the blueprints that reference this, then they all get corrupted and I have to go in and resave them all. So thank you, Epic, for still having not fixed that after like 5 years. The ship itself is the centre of the universe, or rather the centre of the bridge is the centre of the universe, in game terms. Yes, Fredashay, that's exactly correct. So the only limitation we have to how big ships can be in the game is quite literally VRAM and physical RAM in player computers. Obviously, the more objects you have and the bigger the environments are, the more texture memory you're using, the more RAM you're using through loading geometry and objects. So, we will hit physical upper limits as to just how much stuff we can load at once. But that aside, there is no limit on how big a ship can be in the game because of the fact the interiors are static environments. So, really, we could have massive city ships in the game and have them flyable. Again, as long as the object count doesn't become too severe. Have we thought about VR? Yes, we're very much adding VR. Sorry, and I think someone mentioned VR earlier and I didn't get round to answering. Yeah, VR is something we're going to put out as a test version at the same time, or rather immediately after, the next demo update. So as soon as what we're working on now goes live for the demo, the very next thing we're doing is putting out a very simple VR proof of concept where you'll be able to walk around the ship using various locomotion methods, and then physically interact with UIs and things with motion controllers. Maybe even also just pick up props and chuck them around. Quite basic, quite rudimentary, but just a taste of what full room scale VR is going to be like within the game. But yes, we're definitely adding VR. Proper room scale VR as well, not just stuck to a seat VR. Head bomb. No, we don't want head bombs, we want head bob. Right, so camera zoom is going to be an integer, and head bob is going to be a boolean. Just trying to think ahead as to what other options I might need at some point in the immediate future. Yes, that is one actually. We need Crosshair. Where to put the Crosshair? I suppose it needs to go under controls, doesn't it? Racking my brains as to where I've seen Crosshair options in other games. I mean, it makes sense to put it alongside like mouse speed and that sort of thing. Yeah, I suppose it's not really a display thing, is it? Yeah, I will. I'll put it under controls. And that will be an integer because I'll just use a number to define which crosshair we're using. That'll do, I reckon. So now that I've saved that, if we look at the reference viewer, all of these things will now be broken if I press save. So we're just going to quit out of that, not save any of those things, and reload the engine. Yeah, I suppose interface options is not something we have. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. One of the reasons I want to sort of redo the settings UI, and just the general pause UI overall, is because of the way I've done it with tabs. There's very little screen real estate for adding new things. So yeah, I will look at that. Okay, so we've got our zoom control on the accessibility options. This is going to be a problem because we're running out of space. Let's make that a bit bigger, I think. Yeah, regarding the engineering crew and going around and actually doing stuff, they are actually already capable of fixing broken lights. It is something that we had in the game already, and the code is there. It's still there for that. I removed the weapon from the game because it wasn't really feature complete, and we didn't want people running around shooting each other. But if you smash one of the ceiling panels, the NPCs will dutifully come and repair them. And I think we'll put that back in the next update while we're working on NPCs for the bridge crew. So we'll make it a bit of an NPC update across the board. What I'll probably do is just to give those NPCs an actual job to do, rather than having them just randomly pacing around the ship like they do now. We will implement wear and tear on components, and they will then genuinely be fixing things that are wearing out. No, the NPCs cannot do a cold start yet. They will be able to, and the way we'll handle that is that we'll have basically templates for ship states. So like cold and dark would be a ship state. So if you as the chief engineer or you as the captain tell the chief engineer to put the ship in a cold and dark state, then what the chief engineer would do is on their engineering controls, they would set that as the current ship state, and then that triggers events for the NPC crew to put various components and breakers in certain conditions, which will be templated based on the ship state. So flight ready would be the opposite to that, and then they would go through and press all the buttons and turn on all the valves that needed to be turned on or off, depending on what ship state you've selected. We'll probably have numerous sort of pre-configured ship states, and to be honest, probably wouldn't be a stretch to enable player specified ship states. So you could save the current ship state as is, so you'd go around and set everything how you want it, and then save that state as a ship state, and then you can recall that later. So you could have one where you've got like all the power shunted into the shields, save that as a ship state, and then you can trigger that ship state and have the NPC crew go and set everything up how you want it. Yeah. Yeah, the engine area and the front of the ship, a lot of that is going to be skeletal framework for the update. So I kind of want to make it look like it's currently in the process of being constructed. So when you're out and about flying the ship in the next demo update, it's like you're taking it for a test flight. So all of the front and the rear of the ship will be there, but it'll all be exposed metalwork, like it's literally just been built, lacking its skin. Yes, Paul. So if you were to put the ship in a cold and dark state, that quite literally means turn everything off, even the lights, so nothing at all is running. The ship is literally cold and dark. I can think of gameplay reasons why you'd want to do that. Perhaps you're hiding somewhere and you don't want to let off any heat signatures whatsoever. So shutting down the reactor, turning everything off, could be a very good way of hiding the ship somewhere. For a limited period, of course, before everyone suffocates to death. Yeah, shutting down for a refurb is a good use case for that. I'm going to replace this with an image so that you can go through and select different crosshairs. I'll just make it say dot for now because that's all we've got. Say that's all we got. I'm sure I picked up a content pack off of the Epic Store, which was just a whole bunch of crosshairs. Can't see it. Sure, I've got a pack somewhere. This is what 5 years of collecting plugins looks like. Obviously there's 4 or 5 of them free each month, but then you have epic sales as well. And I'm a real sucker for epic sales. Yeah, I knew I had some. So we've got these ones, which are probably a bit too sci-fi. I don't think they're probably a bit over the top really for what we want. Are these ones any good? Oh yeah, these are a bit better. Yeah, so I'll go through and pick out a selection of decent crosshairs and stick them on there on the options, so you won't be stuck to the little dot anymore. Will the NPC times for setting cold and dark or starting up the ship be within bracketed norms for real human crews? It's a good question. I would say they'll probably be quicker because there's more NPCs generally than you have players. I mean, if you have a game which is like 10 humans playing engineers, then you could probably get it done quicker. But I would expect the NPC crew to generally get the job done quicker because they'll be beelining to what needs to be done all at once. So we've got a crosshair option on there, which won't be hooked up to anything yet. Ignore the flapping, that's a pigeon. It's feeding time. Right, and the other thing I was adding was headbob, wasn't it? So stick that under language, I reckon. I would say that Unreal gives you as much freedom as you want with a game engine. I mean, it's open source. I mean, you can literally download the source for the engine, so you can make it do whatever you want to make it do. Right, so head bob is on preferences. Crosshair is on controls, and camera zoom is on accessibility. So those were the main three things that needed to be added. Right, so we need load and save. Defaults. Right, okay, so loading and loading and saving. Hang on a minute, that doesn't need to go there. Yeah, the pigeons are now 2.5, maybe even 3 weeks old, and they're still kind of dark grey fluff balls rather than actual birds. But they're getting there. They now kind of come out of their cage and kind of walk all over my desk and knock everything over. So they're definitely getting there. Right, so we've got head bob done. We've got crosshair done. And we've got our camera zoom done. So they will now all save, depending on what value we give them, or load rather. And now we just need to save them. So camera zoom goes in there. Blah blah blah. Right. So the variables can save. The variables will be loaded. Right. So that means that the zoom amount should now be saving. So if we set, oh yeah, it's already saved. Yay. We set that to 30%. Save, quit. In settings, 30, right, great. So camera zoom is saving. Doesn't do anything yet, but it is saving. And then we've got crosshair, which can only be a dot for now. And head bob on or off. That's going to be an interesting one. Because if we look at our player character, there's a really horrid bit of code here for handling when you press C, and it's awful. I'm under no illusion as to the quality of this code. I will openly admit it's trash, which is why I want it all replaced. But we need to add a check in here for whether or not head bob is on. So rather than cycling through our loop of camera modes, we instead need to skip from first person to third person, but join these two together with a boolean as to whether or not head bob is on. It's just really messy. Like it's one of those things, and I've had this across multiple projects that I've worked on over the years. Your player controller and generally speaking your player character end up just really bloated with loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff, because generally speaking those are your two main interfaces between the player and the game world. So all of the player actions generally channel through the character and the controller, so you end up adding loads and loads and loads of stuff. At some point I'm going to heavily sanitize all of this and make it really, really neat and lovely. But that day is not this day. So we're binding a global event here for mouse sensitivity. We also need to bind a global event for mouse zoom. So why don't we go ahead and do that? So I'll just stick that on there. Mouse zoom out. Mouse zoom updated. So there is our camera zoom amount, which we may as well promote to a variable. So when we hold down the right mouse button, which is going to be one of these there it is. Right, so blah blah blah. Are we holding something? Yeah, throwing of stuff. So usefully, we're already setting it to 50. So what we need to do is we need to map a range on this. Can you not map a range on an integer? Oh, balls. Why can you not map a range on an integer? Right, and then, so that's from 0 to 100. So this is where we define our zoom amount. So so this is going to be an interesting one actually, because we have an FOV configured, which the player has specified. So I suppose any value less than 90 is going to zoom you in. Which means, right, so what we'll do is we'll clamp this. So the maximum zoom is going to have to be equal to the FOV. The minimum being 0. So let's see what that looks like a minute. So this should be an FOV of 90. So if we reduce that down, we go zoom, 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 zoom. So that's going to be horrendous. Why am I zooming on his nipple? That's uncomfortable. Right, so if I make the minimum value 5, stick that in there. So 0 is going to be 9. No, 0 needs to be the FOV. So it goes from whatever your FOV is down to a maximum of 5, because we want the we need the FOV to override the value. In fact, I don't need to do that because if we're specifying that value there, although, no, actually, scratch that. Because kind of want this to be a consistent value, not based on a moving target, which is the FOV. So if we have the zoom be from 90 to 5, clamp it at whatever the FOV is, it's probably going to work. Because what we don't want is the camera zooming backwards because the FOV is some weird value. And yes, if your FOV is lower than 90, that is officially weird. Right, let's give that a whirl actually and just see how that feels. I suppose the other thing I need to do is I need to change, I've been meaning to do for a long time, change the camera sensitivity as a scalar based on the zoom level. So when you zoom in, the mouse moves more slowly. Right, so standard zoom level, whatever the default is. If I change that to 100, we should have mega zoom. Yay! Well, that's interesting. It's automatically scaling the up and down already. Huh. Why is it not scaling the left and right? Okay. And if we set that down to 0%, nothing happens, which is good because we're not moving backwards, so perfect. That gives us little mini zooms. And our default is that. Great. Done and done. Ooh, we know what this means. This means we can tick something off. Tick. So why, why oh why is camera up scaling and camera right isn't? I'm assuming this is going to be something to do with ALS, which for the record we are getting rid of at some point. So if we multiply that by that, What I might do actually, if I just times that. Make that floats. Is that right? 50 times 0.01 is 0.5, yeah, so times that value by 0.01, then times that by that. So that means ever we have as our zoom around, so 50. Hang on, no, because that needs to invert, doesn't it? No, that needs to be a mapped range. So 0% would be 1, and let's go for 10% at 100% zoom. So our lefty righty should be much slower. Is, except it's also slow there as well. So I think we're setting a Boolean there for zooming. Yeah, okay, so it's never simple, is it? So do a select. So if the zooming view is false, then we're just going to stick that in there. If zooming view is true, then we need to stick that in there. Messy, but it should work. So that is fine. Yeah, right. So fine for. Ooh, a bit faster. So. Perfect. Should really help with like pressing stuff when you're zoomed in. How does that feel? A different value. Don, yes, that was the plan and still is the plan. So if you're anywhere, it'll give you an external view. The challenge with that, and the reason I can't just do it right now, is because when you're sat in the helm chair, the camera is focused on the helm chair. So as you're moving the camera outside of the ship, the helm chair is actually spinning around for people looking at you on the bridge. To do it just anywhere at any time, I need to have a better way of have actually rendering the external camera, rather than have it just being the player camera that's really, really zoomed out. Because it really needs to lock to the center of the ship to work properly. But yeah, I'll find a solution to that. But yes, that is the idea. When you're just running around the ship, you'll be able to switch to an external view. You won't be able to pilot the ship, of course, but you will be able to look at it. Yeah, the way I think I'll do it is when you go into the external mode, you'll inherit a different pawn. So you'll actually inherit the camera. And I guess we need one for each player in that regard. But it makes more sense to actually switch the player's view to a different camera entirely and have that anchored separately to the player character. Yeah, because we always want it anchored to the center of mass. Right, so I'd say job done on that. Yes, it's ugly, but it does work, so we're leaving it for now. Right, what was next? So we've done that bit. Leave the crosshair for now, although I will add the code for it just so that's done. The chairs on the bridge are going to be completely replaced. We added these chairs way back in the beginning just to have a chair. They were never meant to be final or to exist for very long at all. But they've just stuck all this time. But yes, they will be replaced by much nicer chairs. Something sort of luxury yachtish. Okay, so head bob. Fun. That's something Unreal does that annoys me, because I may as well use this platform to have a moan. Whenever you click on a button within the UI editor and create a node for it, it always puts it underneath whatever nodes exist. So like I could be zoomed in there quite happily. I can pick up something here, add a button for it, and it always puts it right down there, which means I then have to go and get it and move it to where I already was. It's a minor annoyance, but an annoyance nonetheless. all we're doing here is we're going to invert the Boolean. It's a simple on or off, so that's nice and simple. We want to default it to off. So if it's true, well, they're redundant, aren't they? If it's true, be true. Of course it will be true. It's true. So we need another global event. Up here. Why don't we make the global event first? That would help, wouldn't it? So that's our event set up. So now all we need to do is call said event. We've already done the work to load and save the value, so that's fine. Just set that there, stick that in there, plug that in there, move that down there. Whack that in there. So we flip the value if the button is pressed. If the button's not pressed, we just read the value, update the UI. Ooh, yeah, we don't want that one, do we? That's the wrong one. We want that one. Update the UI. That's also the wrong one. Yeah, right. Okay. Right, so the UI bit should be done. We can turn it on and off and it will save as such. So the next thing we need to do is create another event listener here. Okay, so I'll just daisy chain these along. Updated. That. Get the value, promote it to a variable. So that should give us our actual value. So now that we're gathering this from the settings, we now need to do something with it. And this is where the world implodes. Right, so let's get rid of that over there. Make some room. It's only really these bits we're separating out because the rest is unified. So if we do that, and we do that, and we get rid of that. So, camera mode. Oh, this is going to mess a few things up. There are a few places where camera mode changes the behavior of things based on its ID. Could do with changing that to an enum, really. That would mess up the multigate though. Right. So we're defaulting to 0, so so that's just to check to see whether the HUD is available, which is why we're not trying to update it. So we need to take that from there, stick that in there. No. That needs to come after that, so right, so both of these guys have to go into there, which then goes into there. Right, and then we take our Boolean value. So if head bob is false, these need moving around. So let's grab all that. Move that up there. Grab all that. Move that up there. Move that underneath, just with the right way around. So if head bob is true, I'm going to need one of these on both of these. Don't need to do that anymore. So if the UI is valid, not valid, just don't update the UI. I had to add this check because it was throwing some errors otherwise. Right. So that gives us our head bob switch. Now head bob's off by default. So it's always going to come down the false track unless you turn it on. And actually that needs to go in there, doesn't it? Just to make sure we're setting that to 0, regardless of how we're getting there. Remember when I said this was messy? It's really messy. Right, so we set our camera mode to 0. That becomes 1. That becomes 2. That's going to screw some things up, so we will go and fix those in a minute. The rest of that should be fine. Now we need to see what we broke. That was alright. So that is now 2. That's fine, we're just storing it. Right, so 1 would be third person, 2 would be selfie cam, which means we don't need 3. Why was there a fourth one on there? Right, that might actually have been everything that was needed to have been done to get that working. So let's just give it a whirl and see. Right, so I am currently head bobbing. So that's obviously not working. However, it might be that the save variable is defaulted to true. So let's just check. Why are both of these off? First person, third person, selfie mode, first person. Okay, so the camera cycle is working as expected. That's good. So that's definitely defaulting to 0. You should also be defaulted to false, and you should also be defaulted to false. Not that that one makes a difference because that's just called anyway. It's set when it's called, so it shouldn't make a difference. So all of these should default to off. All working. Yeah. You got the right names. Head bob and head bob. So, if settings head bob is true, then we want the minus enabled, so you can set it to false. But if it's false, so wait. These logic things always get my brain confused. Yeah, that needs a not, doesn't it? So if it's false, then that should not. So that's fine. That's exactly what I wanted to do. But this should be the opposite to that, shouldn't it? So if it's true, then that should be false. If it's false, then that should be true. Right, so that should fix the buttons. Stupid logic problems. Right, and that's setting that properly. Yep. That's just flipping the value, so that's fine. You know what? I am going to actually do this properly. So that makes it true, that makes it false. They both go in there. Tidy that up and actually use the variable. Right, so the plus always turns it on and the minus always turns it off, just so there's no ambiguity there. Right, let's just check that that's working and saving. Head bob is still on when it shouldn't be. So head bob is off. We're going to turn it on. The arrows light up as they should. So head bob is currently now on. If you go back into the game, head bob's on, turn it off, press save, and it's off. Okay. Right, so the loading and the saving works. Head bob itself isn't. So, why are we? May as well just make sure that that is in fact actually being set properly. That said false, so that's good. In. So if this is working, then that means this isn't. So regardless of how we get to this point, whether it's through our gates or our overrides, we're definitely setting camera mode to 0 either way, and we're definitely running a check on head bob. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Oh, I know why I did that. No, I don't know why I did that. I thought they were the wrong way round. But no, they were the right way round. And now they're the wrong way round. Head bob is true. Right, first person. Head bob. If it's false, I think I'm going to just put that in there just so that we know. It's kind of irrelevant if it's off, because I imagine most people will leave it off. So we only really want to tell people it's on if it's on. Right, so head bob is off by default. The question is, can we turn it on? Is it because? Yes. Yes, that is why actually. It needs to go through the camera cycle, of course, to actually know whether or not it's on now. So turn it off. It's of course still on, unless we cycle the camera, and now it's off. Right, okay, so all we need to do is we just need to make sure this refreshes. Which means we need a reference to camera mode, and yeah, we'll just force the first person camera again. Right, so that equals 0, i.e. first person, then we are going to force first person aggressively. So all we're doing basically is making sure that if we're already in first person, that it's refreshing it to make sure that it turns head bob on or off as needed. I need to test whether or not this is going to mess up if you're in a chair when you change the setting. But let's try it. Right. Head bob is off. Head bob is now. Look, there we go. Great. It's updating immediately. So if I sit in a chair and I now change head bob to off. Exit the chair. Head bob is off. Great. Okay. Does it mess with the chair? Is the question. Oh, it is coming back. Oh, I see what's happening. So when you press escape, the UI obviously goes away, as you'd expect. And then what's happening is when you turn head bob on and off, it's restoring the UI. It's not the end of the world, but it doesn't look great. And that's probably because we are... yeah, it's turning it on here. So it must not be setting this boolean when you press escape. Okay, I'm going to treat that as a bug for now. However, we can now state that our objective is complete. There we go. So head bob is now, I don't want it in accessibility, but it is now on there. So head bob to gameplay settings and be off by default. Done. Done. Now the crosshair one, that's going to be a little more complicated. One, because I need to go and import a bunch of crosshairs, and two, because the crosshair is not part of the standard HUD. It's actually a separate HUD. So we've actually got two widgets, one of which has the crosshair. And the reason I did that is so that we can turn the HUD off but retain the crosshair. And I think what I'll probably do is I'll have the HUD hide its elements rather than hiding itself. So the HUD will always be there, you just can't see it. But that does mean we can retain the crosshair without having to have two HUDs. Because you don't want two widgets running anyway. Widgets cost performance, and the more you have, the worse that gets. So that's an optimization as much as it is better functionality. Which is a very roundabout way of saying that I shan't do the crosshair on stream because it's going to take ages. Right, well, I think as we are just coming up to the 3-hour mark, I think I'll call it a day for this stream. So, just to recap, we fixed our railing on the main stairwell, and we have, on our roadmap for the patch, ticked off 2 of the to-do items, which is always fun to do. And I think during the course of this week, I'm going to try and really hammer off as many of these to-do list items as I can, so that we're just left with 2 things. 1 is the sensors UI, and 2 is just polishing off the new framework stuff. And then the patch can go live to the public after a week of polishing and bug fixing and making sure that everything is smooth. Okay, well, I think that's about it from me. So thank you once again to everyone for watching the stream. It's always great to have you on board. And I shall see you again on Wednesday's stream. Oh, you can tell I've been streaming for 3 hours. I can't even talk now. Right. Thanks again, everyone. Take care, take it easy, and I'll see you on the next one.